地上251階、
251
高さ
stories.
991メートルを誇るこの建物。
Indeed.
格闘家の聖地である。ここは
Ooh.
戦いを望む者にとって最高の舞台なのだ。
Looks like a coliseum right at the top. Beautiful. Nen.
その秘密が彼の師匠ウィングから今語られる。
いいですか？念とは心を燃やす念のこと。
Oh.
すなわち意志の強さ。
Okay.
そして四大行とは
Zushi
意志を
mentioned
強くする過程の修行。
意志を強くする
the fire that burns within.
天で心を一つに集中し、
Okay,
自
the
己を見
goal.
つめ目標を定める。絶でその思いを言葉にする。
Okay.
連でその意志を高め、発でそれを行動に移す。
So Zushi got to the second last.
絶連発それで四大行
図師の負けないという連に気をされたのです。
Use the Ren aspect of it. I mean, this is fascinating already. I like it.
これから君を殺したいと思います。
Okay, there's the goal, the
いい
intention.
ですか？
ああいいよ無理だから
まずは天。心を一つに集中。
Yeah, I saw a bit of a preview of this, didn't I?
これは頭で思っても口に出しても結構です。
Most of them are doing it mentally,
Kimi
right?
o korosu.
Up until this point, at least. Oh. Oh. Here it comes. Ooh. The chairman did that. Ah. Exact same as Hisoka in the forest. Exact same reaction on Gon's face. Whoa. Yeah. Killua? He okay? Oh, he's a master, all right. Whoa, Killua couldn't take it. Or
今のが
he felt the need to separate himself.
連。すなわち意志が強ければ発行動に足る。
Okay, okay.
気合で勝れば動かずとも敵が引く。はったりの語源と呼ばれています。連は
Killua didn't
刃を
like
す
it
る
though.
と頑固に変わり、間違った考えを正そうとする柔軟性を失ってしまいます。
I'll
そ
definitely
れ
come
ゆ
back
え
to
に
this.
心が充実しないうちは控えた方がいい。
Hmm.
君たちも図師も今は心を鍛え育てる時期です。
Okay. He's really uneasy about this. Gon isn't quite that uneasy, but
もし念について学びたければ、今は天を極めることのみに励みなさい。天を極めれば、相手の気概に押されることもなくなりますよ。
as Killua just did. I mean, both of them felt it, but Killua really reacted to that.
まずは、
Oh. Oh, beautiful. Yes.
嘘ああ話ももっともらしいし現にウィングの力も本物だと思うけど
Clearly.
それだけじゃ説明できないことがある図師の打たれ強さだ
Good point. Good point.
いくら倒しても起き上がってくるから
So he's
ちょ
not
っと
open
意地になっ
to.
ちゃって最後に少し本気出しちゃったんだ
Oh.
病院を繰り壊せちゃう
Bushido spirit, baby. There's something about it, though. Something that brings it about. Or brings it out of him.
しかし審判はクリティカルとダウンを宣言合計11ポイントでキルア選手の TKO 勝ちです
It's for Zushi's own good as well. Sometimes you're a bit too tough for your own good.
意志の強さでどうこうなるレベルを超えてるよ絶対他に秘密がある
Ooh, okay. He was able to kind of channel
ど
something.
うしました図師？天が乱れているよ。
Ah, he knows. He knows, doesn't
師
he?
範代
Yeah, he knows.
どうして二人に嘘をついたんすか
Yeah,
嘘？
this should be interesting. He's not
もしか
fully
して
open
さ
to
っ
it
きの
just yet.
説明のことかい？
四大行は天、絶、連、発で字も意味も全然違うっす門下生じゃないから嘘をついたっすか
嘘じゃない。念は心を鍛えるための大切な修行だよ。念を使うためのね。
Mind Force.
門下生でない者に念を教えられないのは事実だ。それゆえ方便で解くのが燃える方の念なんだ。
Okay,
念
interesting.
は使い方を間違えれば 恐ろしい武器になっ
Okay,
て
it
しまう。
makes sense. You have to be careful about who you teach it to.
例えば
Okay, I get that. It's understandable. Oh, he's gonna slice them, isn't he? Oh, how cool. So is that exactly Hisoka's thing?
紙切れを
His
刃
cards?
と化し人を傷つけることも
It is. It is.
逆に自らの体を鋼に包み守ることも可能。念は努力次第で誰にでもできる。だからこ
Anyone.
そ教える者は相手を選ばねば。
No, no, I understand that. That makes sense. He's right. He's right.
その本自分まだ読んでないっす。
あ
ジュースも自分のっす。
ごめん。
I'll get you more juice, but I like the master. I do. So the examiners knew that some of these contestants or participants are using Nen. Of course. People like Hisoka and others.
キルア君とゴン君はもう200回ですか。
はい。
Is he going to them?
仕方ない。
Ah.
いってらっしゃいませ。
Oh, look at this. That's Nen, for sure.
なんだろう。いきなり魔物が住むジャングルに迷い込んだみたいだ。
Whoa.
ただのまっすぐな通路なのに。
Who's on the other end of it?
行くぜ。行ってやる。
Okay, boys, get ready for this. Who's admitting this? That is something. That is
ダ
something.
メだ。これ以上進めない。進みたくない。これは殺気だよ。完全に俺たちに向けられてる。
No! It's him, isn't it?
おい、一体誰だ。
The bloodlust?
出てこいよ。
キルア様とゴン様です
She。looks tired.
わかんね
I mean, I thought it was Hisoka.
ちなみに
The bloodlust that he
200
felt
クラス
in
に
the.
は現在173名の選手が在籍しております。納得された上でご参加ください。
Oh. It is him. It is him. Hey, new fit? Of course he's here. Of course.
別に不思議じゃないだろう。
No,
僕
not
は
really
戦
yet.
闘が好きで、ここは格闘の聖地だ。君たちこそなんでこんなところにいるんだい？なんてね。もちろん偶然じゃ
Ah,
君
he's
たち
tracking
を
him.
待っていた。あれはちょっとした操作で。
Ah.
いつ
He's
いつ
good
か
at that,
簡
eh?
単に検索
Or
で
he's
きる
got connections.
いずれここに来ることは予想できたけどね。
Oh my god, how exciting.
そこでここの先輩として君たちに忠告しよう。このフロアに足を踏み入れるには出直したまえ。とにかく今は早い。
Ah, interesting.
ふざけんな。せっかくここまで来たのに。
Oh, there it is. Yes.
通さないよ。
And even the face paint is different, right?
これは一体何なんだ。
Yeah, he felt this in the forest.
無理はやめなさい。
Ooh, Sensei's here. Sensei. Yeah, he knew there's some monsters up there, so he had to come.
彼の念に対して君たちはあまりにも無防備だ。
これが念だと。あいつが通さないって思うだけでこうなるっていうのか。嘘つけ。
はい、あれは嘘です。正確に言うと嘘みたいなものです。
His shirt.
本当の念について教えます。
This
だから
time for
今は
real?
ひとまずここから退散しましょう。
You should go, boys. And I think he was hoping for something like this.
なあウィングさん。ひとまず引いて0時までに戻ってこられるか。
Oh my god.
ここに
Really? It's gonna be quite the night, boys.
これが念です。念とは体から溢れ出すオーラと呼ばれる
The
生命
aura,
エネルギ
okay.
ーを
They are using
自
that
在に
terminology.
操る能力のこと。生命エネ
The
ルギー
life
は
force.
誰しもが微量ながら持っていますが、そのほとんどは垂れ流しの状態にな
But
っ
if
て
he
います。
could harness that and
そ
focus
の
it,
生命エネルギーを 肉体にとどめる技術を天と言います。これによって肉体は頑強となり、常人よりはるかに若さを保てます。そして絶、字のごとくオーラを断つ技術、気配を消したり極度の疲労を癒す時などに効果があります。連、通常以上のオーラを生み出す技術。
Look at this. You don't have the purple shading this time.
感じますか？
ああ、圧迫感
Zushi. I love
で
it.
も嫌な感じはしないね。
Right. It didn't
そ
have
れは
that.
私に敵意がないからです。それにしてもこの二人の感性の鋭さに
They
は
are special
驚かされる。
boys.
おそらく生まれ育った環境もあるだろうが、本人の資質によるところが大きい。
Nature and nurture, right?
オーラは人間の内部から発するエネルギー、故に人間同士の使用が最も効果的。いい意味でも悪い意味でも邪念を持って無防備な人を攻撃すればオーラだけで人を殺せます。念の使い手から身を守る方法は一つだ
Is
け。
to use Nen.
自分も念の使い手になること。
Let's go. Let's go.
天による防御のみ、自分のオーラで相手のオーラを防ぐ。
Wow. Yeah, I definitely have to come back to this before I do my discussion. Just take some points. You're toast. Love that sound design. And Zabro was using it as well,
肉
right?
体は粉
Nen.
々に壊されてしまいます。
Hold up. Is
200
this
回クラスの前に立ちはだかったヒソ
is this the final phase of the exam?
果たしてゴンはキルア
Because they said it continues,
本
right?
当の念を習得して受付が終了する0時ま
This
で
might
の
be
間
it.
に
To master Nen, to learn Nen. I love it. Right then, let's get into it, folks. Episode 28, Nen and Nen. Yeah, that title really checks out, doesn't it? But yeah, it's a great episode, isn't it? It's got to be one of the better episodes out of the 28 I've seen so far. Of course, take out the two recap episodes. But yeah, it really kind of felt like a crucial episode, right? In the early stages of this story. Really crucial episode because it really opens up to something that is beginning to feel like something crucial. Nen, right? And the thing I really liked about this approach is something I've actually commented on already in the exam phase, right? It was clear that, yeah, these things are on display. Something is at play here. I'm seeing things naturally, right? I love that it didn't feel the need to do that whole thing of, oh, all of a sudden, look at this, and it just opens up something out of the blue, right? And for the sake of shock factor, it kind of holds all of that information from the audience, right? Doesn't even give you a hint of it. But no, that's not the case here, right? It was naturally already showcased throughout the episodes, right? Throughout the exam phase. It's just that now I have context. Now I have actual exposition, information, legitimate information through someone who is a bit of an authority on the subject matter, or at least someone that has been, I don't know, a major focus over the span of these past few episodes, right? Or not past few, past two, right? Near the conclusion of the last episode. And then, of course, this episode really kind of gets into Nen 101. I mean, it truly really gets there by the conclusion. The master felt that, okay, now that they've essentially made it up top to the 200th floor, he has no option but to go teach them, right? He almost, at that moment, it felt like he feels this sense of honor or duty to make sure that he doesn't let them, walk into their death, essentially. But who else shows up and has a full-on, you shall not pass moment? Yes, indeed, it is the return of Hisoka. He's got a bit of a different look. I mean, essentially, it's a change of clothing. But yeah, that's usually quite a noticeable thing in anime or, I don't know, in animated shows. Because it's not that common to have characters change their clothing, their outfits, or, their look. I mean, it's common. It's becoming a bit more common now, I suppose. Because you can have an entire show that has the characters in the exact same outfits. Right, exact same outfits, and yeah, if it's one of those things that you just kind of overlook, you don't really need to think about much. But once you kind of clock it, or once you do kind of pay attention to it, then I don't know, it begins to break some of that immersion, doesn't it? But as always, that character, that performance, it just completely takes over the screen, right? Again, scene stealer, absolute scene stealer. And I love how he kind of jokes about, oh, I mean, of course I'm at a place like this, This is like I said in the last episode's discussion, a heaven for people like Hisoka, right? And here he is. And he actually tries to sell it like that, or he at least jokes about it and immediately tells him, nah, I'm kidding. I've been tracking you. But yeah, this is essentially how much he cares about their trajectory, their growth, right? That he feels the need to check in on them, to track the progress, right? And he knew that they are going to show up here at some point, right? And he's there ahead of time. And essentially, he is looking out for them. Listen, ultimately it might be for selfish reasons because again, he needs the fruit to ripen and he has to make sure they stick around for that to happen, essentially, right? And he wants them to grow. He wants them to learn. It's essentially the next phase, right? And that kind of reminds me, going back to the ending of the episode, I feel like I understand the final phase of the exam, right? The true exam still hasn't been completed, right? Satots kind of left us on that cliffhanger a few episodes ago. So I think this really might be it, the concept of Nen, or the idea, the notion of learning Nen, right? Maybe not mastering it, because of course, to master something, you're going to need a lot of time, but at least have enough of an understanding that you can defend yourself, that you can enter that floor, right? That you can potentially go through Hisoka's absolutely immense bloodlust that he is emitting, right? It's insane. It's insane that alone can just stop them dead in their tracks. So I think it's safe to say at this point that, of course, Hisoka is a master user of Nen, right? Perhaps Illumi as well. I think they're both on the same level, most likely. But I love that moment as Hisoka tells them, as your senior, I have a warning for you. Both of you are not ready just yet, right? You're not ready for this place. So essentially, he is saving them. He is protecting them from, going in there and taking a massive beating. A beating that could essentially even get them killed, right? And of course, that is, like I said earlier, one of the main reasons Wang decides, okay, I've got to go tell them, I've got to teach them properly, right? But of course, it's a bit taboo to teach someone that's not really a student, right? And I get the feeling that even teaching it to anyone is really quite the step to take, right? There's a lot of ethical dilemmas associated with potentially teaching someone that you don't really know all that much, right? I mean, Wing seems to be a good judge of character because he seems to have a solid read on our boys, Killua and Gon. But still, his concerns are so understandable, and it really makes sense. It does, because the way, they're kind of describing and showcasing the capabilities of Nen, it's kind of frightening, because the undeniable truth of the matter is that there's a lot of terrible people out there. And again, I've said it a few times, but they've firmly established at this point that, there's a lot of darkness out there in this anime, in this story. And I'm sure that at some point I am going to see the dark side of Nen usage, the abuse of that usage, right? So completely understandable that Sensei was, not entirely open to teaching them until it became really quite necessary for him to step in, right? Though, of course, his lie, it's not a complete lie either, right? He kind of pivots and he tries to indirectly kind of put them on the right path. So, once they do kind of get to learn about it properly, they'll have some sort of base level understanding of some parts of it, perhaps. But I love how his lessons for Zushi are also essentially for us, the audience, as well, right? He uses that example of the piece of paper, right? The page from the book. And he hardens it, and it's essentially a blade. It's an incredibly dangerous and effective projectile. And I've seen it a long time ago. Hisoka uses it on his cards, right? Though, of course, Satots, the real Satots actually caught it, right? And of course, Satots knew that Hisoka is an end user, right? The thing is if you go back to the exam phase, now after the information I have, and after I do have some of this context, it feels like it was this secret, this open secret almost, that everyone just kind of agrees about, or at least everyone agrees on kind of keeping under wraps, or not openly discussing it, or I don't know, talking about it or teaching it. And maybe that could potentially answer some of my own questions. The Killua and Illumi incident in the final phase of the exam, right? To me, it's always kind of felt like, okay, he has some sort of influence over Killua. Right now, the cool thing is Killua actually has a better understanding for that, because up until this point, for his entire life, he's always felt this really creepy presence from his own brother, Illumi, right? Something that's kind of kept him in line, kept him in check, right? Again, the fear of the unknown. He does not know the whole story behind this creepy feeling that he gets. But yeah, now I know for sure that, of course, he was using Nen. And of course, people like the chairman and the examiners, people like Satotsu and the others know about this. But yeah, going back to my initial point, yeah, I am beginning to think that this actually might be the final phase of the exam. Learning Nen, being able to handle yourself around other users of Nen. I mean, there's such a distinct feeling of this having to be it, right? Because it's just so massive for the story, isn't it? It's a crucial moment, because by the end of this episode, they've made one thing really clear. You're going to need to know about Nen. And you can really just see how important something like Nen can be to hunters, right? So much so that, it almost feels like something that could be a requirement. But the whole idea, the concept of Nen is just so fascinating, isn't it? It's so robust and innovative. So I was immediately sucked into it, right? I love the idea of learning a whole new system, right? So to me, it is something really quite engaging. And you simply have to applaud the brilliance of this approach, right? Like I said a few times already, it was given to us naturally throughout the story already, right? I've seen Nen in action already, but now I have context for it. Now I know how to kind of describe it and how to really pinpoint it. Now I know a lot of these incidents that took place throughout the exams, or in the exam phase essentially, leading up to this episode as well. Yeah, you can kind of pinpoint, okay, that was the usage of Nen. You've got Zabro a few episodes ago using Nen, right? Then you've got, of course, you've got Hisoka using Nen throughout the series already, on so many occasions. You've got Illumi, of course. You've got Gon. Gon's actually done it, and this goes back to my comment about, the possibility of a lot of these characters, mainly the principal cast, the possibility of them already unknowingly using some of these techniques. There's that standout moment. Gon is able to suppress his presence, his aura, right? That's the term they're really using here and utilizing. And it's a term I've already used in my discussions, because of course, aura is not, it's not native to Hunter x Hunter. It's an actual term, right? So, I'll get more into that and, the real life application of that term, and then bringing that into the fictional world of this anime, right? The use of it. But yeah, Gon was able to do it. Zetsu, then I believe he was able to tap into Zetsu. And it was really quite impressive, right? Because Hisoka noticed, once Gon kind of makes his presence known after that, he was really quite impressed. But again, Gon is not just anyone normal, is he? Right? He might be predisposed to excelling at some of these. And of course, a little bit earlier in that episode, you have that incredible moment. It's one of the standout moments of the show so far, of the anime so far, because of how bizarre it felt, right? And I'm speaking of Hisoka in that forest expelling his bloodlust, his murderous aura, right? He's expelling it. And he's not, the thing is, the difference there is that he's not targeting anyone, right? Gon happens to be really close by, and, it hit him like a truck. He just immediately wanted to get out of there, much like how he immediately didn't want to continue going into that hall. And, in that hall, he even comments on it. This bloodlust is being directed at us, directly at us. So he's capable of picking up on that. He knows, he picks up on that, right? But, another really unique situation there is that the receptionist, I I think through her, you kind of get this really interesting opportunity to show the audience perhaps that, okay, you know, clearly Hisoka is targeting Gon and Killua in that moment, because for the most part, she's really quite oblivious to all of it, right? At one point, she's looking back and forth. She's like, huh? Because she's simply not really picking up on any of that aura that that Hisoka is expelling at that point, right? Targeting specifically towards Gon and Killua to keep them at bay, to keep them from entering. I mean, the really cool thing is that that whole Hisoka appearance is essentially full of examples, right? In the field, it's showing us essentially a master user of Nen, giving examples of it, right? He throws his card immediately after, or at least a few moments after you see, or a few scenes after you see Sensei or Master, rip out the page from the book and do the same, right? So it's essentially serving as a reminder to the audience, but I believe, all of us, or at least a majority of us, can make the connection to his cards from much earlier as well. Then, of course, there's that notion of him targeting those two specifically and kind of bypassing the receptionist. Then there's also the notion of him actually suppressing his aura, completely hiding his presence from all three of them, right? He just kind of almost appears out of thin air, right? It's almost as if he's there, but he's so goddamn effective at it that it doesn't even register for them. Unless, of course, he actually does kind of appear out of thin air at that moment, because, Killua can do something similar, right? He can just kind of disappear for a split second and, appear in another place. But that's just essentially really quick movements that the naked eye cannot pick up. But also, how about that receptionist? I mean, I'm not sure if it's just as simple as her maybe being tired because of a night shift, maybe. I mean, if that's the case, it's interesting that they actually go that far in terms of detail. Or is it potentially because she is around a lot of these Nen users? And I think she said something like, there's 173 contestants present on that floor at the moment, right? So that's a lot of Nen users. I'm guessing most of them, a majority of them, are Nen users, but I'm sure there might be a few that still made it up there that don't have someone like Hisoka, that don't have someone like Master Wing coming after them, stopping them from entering. But let me kind of go back to the term aura, because clearly it's quite a major component of all of this, but it's a real life thing, right? It's a term that gets used a lot for athletes, pro athletes, right? It's a term that gets used a lot for great leaders, public speakers, right? Oh, there's something about them. There's this aura about them. It's a term that actually gets used a lot for combat sports athletes. In his prime, this fighter had that aura about him, that presence about him. This coach, this manager has this aura about him. So this whole concept of kind of manipulating your aura, right? Channeling it, making sure that you're actually using it and harnessing it rather than letting it leak from your body, from your system. I love that idea. I love that concept. Manipulating it and expelling it, using it offensively and defensively as well in situations. It's really intriguing stuff. It really kind of pulls you in. Like I said, it pulled me in immediately. But going back to the beginning of the episode, the first time they get the lesson, the first Nen lesson, or attempt at least, there you see that Wing is essentially targeting Killua specifically, right? And that's the reason he really gets hit by it, right? So much so that he has to separate himself, right? Because of course, Zushi and Gon are standing right there as well, and they're seeing it play out. They're feeling it, I suppose, in some capacity, but not in the same capacity as Killua. Because of course, the example at that point was, okay, for example, I'm going to kill you, right? And then he kind of goes through the steps. But the thing is, since there actually is a proper lesson in the conclusion of this episode, or at least the beginning stages of a lesson, because I feel like, it's just kind of scratching the surface still. It's kind of tough to decide how much of the first lesson I should kind of really look at. I feel like it's a case of, okay, let it just play out for the next episode and perhaps the next few episodes, and then kind of, come back and compare notes to see if, a lot of it is still applicable, right? He's not completely lying. So of course, a lot of it might be applicable still in some capacity. But I think as of this point, I should focus a bit more on the actual, the actual lesson, the proper lesson that I begin to get. But let's focus a bit on the second lesson, the proper lesson this time, right? So he told them that Nen essentially refers to the ability to control your aura, right? That's essentially a major component of this. Your aura, the life force, the life energy, that everyone has a bit of that in them, right? But for the majority of people, it just kind of leaks away. But also, that being said, everyone is capable of tapping into this, right? If they apply themselves, if they actually, try to do it, try to actually get training for it. But again, for the majority of the world, the people, the population of this universe or this world in this anime, it's not a thing that matters. They're going about their normal lives and all of that. So as far as Ten goes, he's speaking of it being, this idea, the ability to build up and contain this life force, this life energy, right? To shroud yourself in your aura, to stop it from leaking, right? You're not wasting any of it anymore. You're in control. You're able to hold on to all of it, right? And build on it, even strengthen it. Again, I'm sure there might be a few things I might not get on my first attempt here, but I'm sure the next few episodes are about to do a solid job of making sure that everything is explained thoroughly. But this concept of shrouding can essentially make your body harder if need be. And he also mentioned something about, slowing down the effects of aging considerably, right? So, there's got to be so many characters that I've seen already. People like perhaps the chairman, who comes to mind immediately, that are, certainly dialed into this, right? I mean, the chairman looks old already, but he actually might be much, much older than I actually think he is, right? Hell, even Sensei, Master, Wing, he could be much older than he is, or that he actually looks much younger for his age, right? Go back to perhaps Killua's grandpa, right? There's another one. There's another possibility there. He could be someone that is in the same boat as someone like a Netero, the chairman. Well, also, I think at this point, it's becoming a bit more clear that indeed, most of Killua's family probably knows, or not most, though, the experienced ones at least, they know about Nen and they're clearly users of Nen. They've shown me that Illumi is certainly quite the user. But, after this episode and, this notion of kind of not really speaking of Nen, keeping it on the DL, is beginning to feel like you kind of have to go out there and learn it for yourself out in the field. But, once again, Wing actually emits his aura, right? He's expelling it. But this time it doesn't have that whole purple presentation because, that is kind of associated with malice. But here, this time both Gon and Killua, even though they both pick up on it, they also pick up on the fact that, okay, there's no creepy feeling behind it. It doesn't make us uneasy, especially Killua, right? So, from a visual standpoint, it's really quite effective to present it in that manner. But, that being said, he was just as easily able to, mimic malice? Was he mimicking malice, or did he actually, for that bit in the first lesson, the first attempt earlier in the episode, did he actually have that malice towards Killua, right? Just for the example, but he was able to tap into it for that moment. But yeah, of course, the best counter to Nen is Nen itself, right? You have to learn Nen. You have to use your own aura to block the other person's aura, right? And that, I suppose that kind of falls into 10, doesn't it? Right, at least from the defensive point, right? If you're on the defensive, right, the whole concept of building up that aura and keeping it, containing it, making your body harder and all of that, right? So yeah, there's a lot going on here, right? And it's really quite fascinating. But I'm sure, I'm just kind of scratching the surface. But I feel like I'm not really, I don't find myself scratching my head too much, right? So far, so good. It makes sense, it checks out. I'm still kind of, I'm still at the moment, I'm not sure if I'm going to be sticking with the subs. I'm thinking of potentially switching over as well. And of course, it makes a lot of sense that Sensei felt the need to step in, right as Zushi is tapping into it. I mean, this is serious stuff. He tells him that if someone really wanted to, they could kill someone, right? They could kill someone just with aura. Though he did mention, if you're targeting someone that is innocent, so of course in that scenario, there's a bit of a power imbalance, right? But it's that easy. It could be done. But yeah, going back to my initial point, this feels like a crucial moment for the story, because now, once it's been established and once I really kind of get to learn all about it and the characters get to learn about it, it's going to change. Everything's going to change from that point on. It's going to be through the lens of Nen. How I kind of perceive these characters perceiving each other. So yeah, man, it's exciting stuff. It really is. And before I finish off, a few more things. I noticed that Hisoka even changed his face paint. Now the only thing I can really link it to is, it's green and purple. So green for Gon, his outfit, and purple for Killua's pants. That's the closest, I don't know, connection I can really make, but it is there. That connection is there, I suppose. Maybe the symbols on his top, on the back of it, changed as well. I'll have to double check and see. It could be interesting to see if he's kind of using different symbols to make different statements, maybe even. I don't know. He's an interesting fellow, and he simply must ensure that his fruit ripens, right? But yeah, I think that should do it for this one, folks. It's a race against time for them, because they kind of need to get back up there before midnight to register. Gon's going to be tossed back down to level 1 if it doesn't take place, and Killua is going to be banned outright because he didn't register the last time he was around. So it certainly adds this element of drama to it, doesn't it? Right, the race against the clock aspect of it. But yeah, I'm excited to get to the next part of the lesson. So if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access to the next few episodes right now, or perhaps even timer-based full length or full opacity, consider checking out the Patreon page. The links are in the description and the pinned comments. Also links to social media, things like Twitter and Instagram, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 29. Until then, take it easy.